Hi everyone. I have a lot of things I've been wanting to talk about, but I made a really interesting discovery while watching this video over here, which was an excellent video by John Costick. It's called The Fall of Man. This video is packed with information. It's really amazing, but while I was watching this video, I noticed something really interesting that I wanted to share with you, and it has to do with DNA, but first I wanted to try to explain why I believe the entire Bible is a representation of DNA. I believe that's why there's two covenants. There's a first and a second covenant. I believe that's why the Lord's coming is in two parts. There's a first coming and a second coming. And incidentally, in between the two covenants was the Feast of Hanukkah. And I thought this was a really interesting image over here for Hanukkah. But I've mentioned this before, how I believe that the Feast of Hanukkah is represented in Zechariah 4:11 with the 7 candlesticks, and then you have the 2 additional olive tree candlesticks. I believe that's a representation of Hanukkah, and I've also explained how I believe this is a parallel to Zechariah 14 when the Mount of Olives splits. And so this is something that I want to talk a little bit more about as we get closer to Hanukkah, if the Lord should tarry. Of course, no one knows the day or the hour, but another thing that I wanted to try to explain is why I believe this is the year, 2017 is the year of the Lord's coming, and I just wanted to go over this timeline that I put together some time ago. And this is in addition to what most of us already know about Daniel's prophecy with the decree in 1947 and the Balfour Declaration and all of that. This is a pattern that I had discovered some time ago, and actually came up with these dates that I just added these dates in this morning because I didn't have them on here originally. But the dates in the red for the Exodus, 1484 BC, and then Joshua's death, 1434 BC, the Wall of Nehemiah, 434 BC, the Battle of Granicus, which was when Alexander the Great defeated the Persians. This was in 334 BC, and then all these dates over here. I had actually come up with these dates. I made a video about it some time ago, but I had come up with these dates back in 2009, and at the time I had no idea what the Hebrew years were or anything. The only thing that I had discovered is that these events seemed to fall in a pattern of every 50 years, and one of the things that I had discovered around that time was that this was a fulfillment of Daniel 8. In Daniel 8 it talks about the ram and the he-goat, and it talks about 2,300 evenings and mornings, which a lot of people have interpreted as days. But I had done some research, and I had come up with an article that explained that the evenings and mornings would have been an idiom for Passover, because the Passover lamb was eaten from evening to morning. So this was talking about 2,300 Passovers, and from the Battle of Granicus to 1967, which was the Hebrew year 5727, was exactly 2,300 Passovers. And then the prophecy talks about the last end, which I believe is the last Jubilee that's talked about in Daniel 8. So I had made that discovery around that time, and based on that discovery, I tried to just check to see what occurred 50 years or 100 years before that. I went back 49 Jubilees, and then I went back 69 Jubilees, and I realized that was the time of Joshua's death. And at the time, I didn't even know that Joshua was the name for Jesus in the Hebrew, and that this was a type of Jesus. So it didn't really mean anything to me that that occurred 69 Jubilees from what would be the current Jubilee, which at the time I thought was going to be 2015 to 2016. Like I said, this was back in 2009. And because I didn't realize that this was a type of Yeshua, I was trying to find more information about the significance of 69 Jubilees, and that's when I discovered that it was at the time of Joshua's death that Israel actually became a nation, because that was the year that they went into the Promised Land, because they had promised to carry Joseph's bones while they were in the wilderness up until the time they went into the Promised Land, and that's when Joseph's bones were buried. It was at the time of Joshua's death, so this was when Israel became a nation. 69 Jubilees from the current Jubilee year, and this was also the time that Joshua was cut off, which is a type of the Messiah. So working the prophecy in Daniel backwards, it works off to the cutting off of the Messiah after 69 Jubilees. And then the entire prophecy is for 70 Jubilees, which takes you to the year 1484 BC. And when I had put in the year 1484 BC into Google, that's when I found out that that was the year of the Exodus. So I kind of discovered all these dates just going backwards and just putting the dates in and seeing if anything happened during that time. And at the time, I didn't have any idea what the Hebrew dates were. All I knew is what were the Gregorian dates, and I didn't realize that there was a pattern until I tried to put these dates into the Hebrew date converter, and that's when I noticed there was a pattern that was alternating between the years 27 and 77. Okay, and then I didn't add this last part into the timeline until even more recently, and that was after I had seen a video by Pastor Sandy Armstrong where he had come up with the date for 6,000 years, and that was the Gregorian date 5,983. And when I went to verify that date to see if that was a date of creation, that's when I noticed that others had done the calculations as well and had come up with that date. And that's also when I noticed that based on the current Hebrew calendar, the year 5,984 BC to 5,983 BC would be the Hebrew year -222. And so again, this creates the number 27 with the 3 2s at the beginning and then the 3 7s at the end. Now keep in mind that this prophecy is recorded in the book of Daniel, which is the 27th book of the Bible. And the prophecy culminates in Daniel 9:27 with the confirming of the covenant, where it says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease," which Jesus did when he was cut off. And then it goes on to say, "For the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." And of course, there's several scriptures in the Bible that talk about God making it desolate during the time of the tribulation. But this is also talking about the Antichrist and the abomination of desolation, which will begin at the time of the tribulation, the second half of the 3.5 years. Okay, and you can see that here in Matthew 24, where it says, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe to them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So the Great Tribulation begins with the abomination of desolation, and we're told in the book of Revelation and in the book of Daniel that the Great Tribulation is 3.5 years. Okay, and I've explained before how this is the same event as what's recorded in Zechariah 14, but I think it's interesting the next verse over here in verse 17, it says, "Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house." And this has been pointed out before, but how can anyone not come down off their housetop unless there's a rapture? And then the next verse says, "Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes." So again, you have to wonder, why wouldn't they be wearing their clothes if they're in the field? But anyway, getting back to the prophecy, I've explained before how it works out from the Ezra decree, which is in chapter 7, and it was the 7th year of Artaxerxes, and that was in 457 BC, so you have 777, that works out to 27 AD as the coming of the Messiah, and then that was confirmed in John 1 verse 27, where it said, "He it is who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latchet I'm not worthy to unloose." Now, I've also explained before how the covenant is represented by Mount Horeb, and it was in Exodus 17 when Moses struck the rock and water came out of the rock. That's recorded in Exodus 17, but as you can see over here in Deuteronomy, it says the Lord our God made a covenant with us in Horeb. So Horeb is another name for Mount Sinai, and I've pointed out before that the Strong's number for Horeb is 2722, but it comes from another word that's just a variation of the same word. It sounds the same. You can see it right here, or sounds very similar, and that's Strong's number 2717. They both mean the same thing. They mean to lay waste or make desolate, which is the same thing that Mount Zion means. It means a parched place or a dry place or desolate place. And so you have Mount Horeb, and it's also appears in the Old Testament 17 times. And the Strong's number is 2722 or 2717. I've also pointed out how the Strong's number in the Hebrew for ark, as in the Ark of the Covenant, is Strong's number 727, but it's a variation of another word for ark, and that's 717, which means to pluck or gather. And the Strong's number 727 in the Greek is a form of the word arpazo, which is the word for rapture in the Greek. So that's either Strong's number 726 or 727. Okay, so it was in John 1:27 where John the Baptist said, "He it is who's coming after me has preferred me, whose shoes latchet I'm not worthy to unloose." But this same verse is recorded in Mark 1:7, where it says, "And preached, saying, There cometh one mightier than I, after me the latchet of whose shoes I am not worthy to stoop down and unloose." So John the Baptist is saying the same thing over here in Mark 1:7. And so I've explained how I believe 27 represents 2017, and it seems that God is confirming the year 27 over here in John 1:27 as the first coming of Christ, as well as the second coming of Christ. And I've explained before how God seems to be confirming the Hebrew year 3327 for the building of the wall in Nehemiah, because it was in the 32nd year of Artaxerxes. And so you have the number 32 within the Hebrew year 3327. But you also have it confirmed in Nehemiah 6:15, where it talks about the wall being finished in 52 days, because the Strong's number for Elul, which is when it says the wall was finished, is 435 or 434. This is also the word Elul, 434. So this confirms the year 434 BC as being the year when the wall was finished, because it was finished in Elul. And I have some more things that I wanted to share about the wall, but I'll have to do that in the next video. Thank you.